Okay, so today I will speak with one of my colleagues from the Secretary of Interior. I decided to invite someone who really knows about the training because here in SEB, we are an institution working with language test and not really the training. So I will give the floor to Eugénie Marie. She's working in the Ministry of Interior in a direction working with language and citizenship. So she will start and I will follow. So I am pleased to give the floor to Eugénie Marie.
So thank you for your invitation. So in France, integration is conceived as a shared desire between the foreigner arriving and the host society. It aims to promote access to autonomy while respecting the principles and values of the host society in order to create an inclusive and cohesive society. The objectives of the public policy of integration are to enable foreigners who have been admitted for long-term residence to learn French, know and understand the values of France and the Republic, and facilitate access to employment. The Republican Integration Contract, the CIR, is the first step in the process of integration into French society. It's implemented by the French Office of Immigration and Integration, the OFI, under the supervision of the Ministry of the Interior. Approximately 220,000 new resident permits are issued each year, mainly for family reasons. And approximately half of the immigrants admitted for the first time to stay in France sign a Republican Integration Contract, a CIR. This contract formalizes the immigrants' desire to settle in France on a long-term basis. 107,000 people signed the CIR in 2019 and 79,000 in 2020 due to the sanitary crisis. Only 79,000, more than 85% of the signatories have a high school education or a university education. To obtain a first residence permit in France, there is no prior language requirement. However, mastering the French language guarantees a successful integration. So this is why the French government has increased the French language training offer as part of the CIR, but also afterwards by financing additional offer in the territories. So the CIR was introduced by the law of March 7, 2016, replacing the CAI, Contrat d'accueil et d'intégration, Reception and Integration Contract. Under the previous CIR, foreigners benefit from language training at level A1.1. At the end of their training, they took the DILF, Diplôme Initial de Langue Française. It's a foreign language diploma issued by the French Ministry of Education. Since the A1.1 language level was deemed insufficient to provide newcomers with the means to integrate into French society, lawmakers raised the course level of the Republican Integration Contract to level A1. So the law of March 2016 proposed language training packages of 50, 100, and 200 hours to signatories with a view to reaching level A1. The Interministerial Committee of Integration of June 5, 2018 further strengthened language training by doubling the number of hours and creating a 60 hours package for people who cannot read or write in their own language. So now we have 4 packages of 100, 200, 400, and 600 hours that is offered to newcomer foreigners who have signed a CIR to reach the A1 level. The new OFI contract that comes into effect on January 1, 2022 offers a 10% bonus of hours for people who, after 400 or 600 hours of training, have not reached the A1 level. And after, a complementary offer of courses is proposed to signatories to reach the A2 or B1 level, 100 hours aimed at level A2, and 50 hours aimed at level B1, but a package that will be doubled on January 1, 2022, so 100 hours. So rate of people directed to a language courses in 2020, so 45.9%, mainly on 200 and 400 hour courses. And we can see the rate of people reaching A1 level is 73.8%. It's clear that the people who are furthest for French have more difficulty reaching the A1 level. After this year, additional training is financed by the Ministry of the Interior, the prefectures. More than 12 million euros are spent each year to finance training or language workshops. This aims to help foreigners go beyond level A1 in French and reach A2 or B1 level. The foreigners will improve their chances of accessing professional training or getting a job or resuming university studies. These courses are offered by association, training agencies, and universities. So by signing this year, the immigrants agree to follow the training provided, civic and linguistic training, seriously and assiduously, and not to reject the essential values of the Republic. These are these conditions that will be verified by the prefecture to access to the multi-year resident permit. Immigrant is therefore not required to have acquired level A1, but simply have progressed toward this level by at least 1 point between the initial and final assessment test, and to have completed at least 80% of the prescribed number of hours of training. Since law of March 7, 2016 and its implemented decree, access to a residence card is subject to the Republican integration of the foreigners into French society, assessed in particular with regard to their knowledge of French, which must be at least level A2. Finally, to get French nationality, the law of June 16, 2011 advises the linguistic and cultural assimilation of foreigners applicants. B1 in spoken French is required, along with sufficient knowledge of French history, culture, and society, and adherence to the essential principles and values of the Republic. This requirement was raised to level B1 in spoken and written French in April 2020. So to prove the level in French, immigrants can present a diploma or a test. And it's the arrêté of February 21, 2018 for a resident card and decree of December 20 for nationality. This language test must be issued by a nationally or internationally recognized certifying organism and must confirm and validate the mastery of written and spoken skills at the targeted level, so written and spoken comprehension and written and spoken expression. The test must be taken in an approved test center with oral expression validated in an in-person interview. This last condition is explained in particular by the need to limit fraud. In France, so 2 test providers are approved to deliver test languages for access to a resident permit and nationality. France Éducation Internationale with its test de connaissance du français, TCF, and the Paris Chamber of Commerce and Industry with its test d'évaluation de français, TEF. Foreigners have to pay for this, but the French state finances 1 certification per foreigner. And this language certification facilitates the integration process because it allows foreigners to prove their level in French to potential employers. So the state will now finance this test in the context of the next contract of the OFI. As of January 1, 2022, immigrants who will sign a CIR will be able to have the cost of their certification covered. This additional investment by the state has been accompanied by joint work with the CCIP and France Éducation Internationale. At the end of 2020, the Department of Integration and Access to Nationality set up a working group with the 2 certifying organisms to improve and harmonize the scoring, the presentation, and limit the fraud. So now I will give the floor to Mr. Forney to present the work carried out.
Okay, so in the case of France Éducation Internationale, we have 2 versions of our test. One test for naturalization purposes and the other one for residency. If we have an historical perspective, what we can see is that we start mainly 10 years ago with one test. It was for naturalization and it was about 2 skills. After a few years, we see the need for a test for residency with 4 skills. And what happened 2 years ago or last year is that we introduced the use of a test for naturalization with 4 skills: listening, speaking, and writing. The idea is to have broader scope about the language ability of the candidates, but you can understand that this has an impact on the way to compute the final score of a candidate, and I will say you a few words about that. Next year, we will start with a new test. The name is TCF-IRN. Why we have a new test is for the candidates, it's easier to deal only with one test. So with one test, we will fit different purposes because these purposes depend on a level. A2 is for residency, B1 is for naturalization, but we have now the option to use the test for training. The level A1 should be used for training purposes. I want to say you a few words about our collaboration with our Ministry of Interior. This ministry is in charge of applying the official policy and to implement this policy. France Éducation Internationale is a public agency and is a test provider. What we are doing with this secretariat, with this ministry, is to have a constant dialogue. We have some analysis of the data and we have specific meetings with other test providers. I think that this is something very good to know, that we are invited to work with the other test provider and to make decisions together for the benefits of the candidates. I will give you an example about what one of my colleagues, Marianne Laurent, has done in the past to help the decisions, the mechanisms used for decisions. What we have done is to analyze when we start with the test for naturalization for 4 skills. We all know that it should have an impact with the results for the candidates. So in order to avoid a fail rate too high, we decided to deal with different scenarios, and we come with 3 different scenarios. At the end of this process, we discover that we can use the level B1 for 3 skills of 4, and to ask for the higher level of A2. And this was increasing a lot the passing rates for the candidates. So mainly it has been a very positive impact for the candidates. I want to say you a few words about what we are doing with illiterates. I think that it's very difficult to speak about illiterate people because it's never a situation where you have people who don't know how to read or to write. You have a range of possibilities. What we are doing with what we call illiterate people is that we have a specific procedure for them. And for the test, they have always the opportunity to have an interview with what we call our prefecture. They are the representative of the states. And after taking the test, there is still an opportunity for the candidate to have this interview to demonstrate their ability in French for speaking. When we have some illiterate migrants, when it's a newcomer, we have a procedure with one of our organisms, OFI. We have a placement test, and we can identify the people with this kind of issues. You have to bear in mind that in our case, when we ask the migrant to take the exam for residency or, for example, for naturalization, it could be after a run of 5 or 10 years. So these people, they are not so illiterate. What we are doing in France, it's that our values, it's about educability and the valorization of language skills. So what people think is that you have to teach people because they can be taught. So after you have to remember that we have the opportunity to give up to 600 hours to the migrant to get the A1 level. This is meaning that they have resources to be taught to read and to write. When the candidate has taken the test for naturalization, if the candidate is not at B1 level, he has still the opportunity to get this interview with what we call the prefecture. So we have a procedure to help the migrant not to be in a never-ending process, a situation where the migrant has no possibility to become French. Okay, that's all for me. If you have a question for us.